Welcome to Heart Art, where we create art that has a little heart. We are going to make a baby chick today. It's a little pom-pom, and then we add our little details to it. This is something I made with my third grade class, and then we actually added a little bit of a technology piece and a little bit of writing piece with it, which we'll talk a little bit more about that later. First, we're going to get straight into this. First thing I did was I got some yellow yarn and I got some orange yarn also if you'd rather do that, but most of the students did choose yellow. And you just get a nice large skein of whatever yarn you have lying around, that's fine. And I wrapped it around my arm to my elbow 4 times. Now, it took me about 5 times to figure out how much yarn I actually wanted with my hands and how long my arm was. So I suggest making a couple of these ahead of time. Make sure you know how much yarn you actually want to have on your pom-pom, because the more yarn you have, the bigger it's going to be. If you don't have enough, it'll fall apart. If you have too long of yarn, when you wrap it around your fork, if it's not tight enough, it'll be too long. So we'll talk about all of that here. The first thing you need is your yarn, and then I also cut about a 4 or 5 inch piece extra, and this is actually the first piece that goes right on to your fork. Okay, and on your fork you're going to put it right in the middle. Then you're going to take your long yarn here and you're going to want to put that straight in there as well. Now, I'm holding this one on the front and on the back. I place this one on there and I hold it on the back as well. Okay, I hold that front piece there. Now, what I told the students was put your thumb here and wrap it around. If you don't have your thumb here, then when you start to wrap, it'll go down the handle and you can't get it off that handle. If you wrap too quickly and it starts to come off the prongs, it's not going to matter. It won't actually stay put when we go to cut it. So you have to make sure it stays in this section here. You can do it quickly, but try to make sure it's as even as possible. It makes it a lot easier later on. Your chick will look a lot more uniform. So we're just going to start to wrap it. Like I said, put that thumb there. Whether you're left hand or right hand, it does not matter. You can wrap with either hand, wherever you feel more comfortable with. And you want to go all the way to the end of this yarn. Don't leave anything behind. I know it feels like there's a lot, but if you don't get all of it, then you will not have a poofy enough chick to make it look right. Now I take that and I'm just going to hold that there so here's the end, and that's fine. Now I'm going to try and find my piece that I put on first. I know this is right because it's all by itself back there. Now I'm going to pull on it a little bit and it'll show me which one is the other piece. Now I'm going to take those two in the middle again, and I'm going to wrap it once so that it's like I'm about to tie my shoes. So I just crisscrossed it over there, put one under. I'm going to slide it off the fork. You don't need that anymore, but this did start to come loose, so when you do that, be very careful. Don't let anyone distract you. You're going to pull it super, super tight, and then put your finger there and add the other piece of the knot. Pull it super, super tight. Now this part I do for the students. They wrap it and then I tie it up to make sure it's tight enough, because if it's not, it will not work and it'll be just a waste of yarn. Now we're going to use our fabric scissors, which I have a pair of, has the lock on it, which is really nice. If you don't have a pair of fabric scissors, I do suggest getting them if you're going to do this with a class. If you're just making 1 or 2 for yourself, that's fine. But if you're going to be cutting around 100 little baby chicks, you're going to want it, because it makes it so much faster and so much easier on you. Now we're going to go around and we're going to start to cut those loops. Be very careful not to cut the string that you tied holding all of them. It just starts to poof up there. Now flip to the other side and get that one too. Again, be very careful you're not cutting that string that you tied it with, which I have done several times, and you do not want to try and fix that. You just pitch it and start over. It's too much of a hassle to try and fix those. Now here in the middle I can see I didn't get all of them, so I'm just going to go back through and check and move them around a little bit, and then I can go through and I can give a little haircut, make sure that I'm happy with what his hair looks like, and I can make sure he sits pretty flat and get all my extra yarn off. And then I have just an assortment of googly eyes that I have here. Some are oval. If you get too big, they start to fall off. As adorable as they look, it just doesn't work as well. I've got ones that have eyelashes. Those were working okay. I've got these medium ones. And then I usually pick what I like to call the small ones because there's even extra small ones. But I'm picking the small ones. I think they sit pretty nicely on the face there. So I've got them picked. And I have the students pick the eyeballs while I'm cutting, so they're already ready. I also have them get a little piece of orange paper that I have pre-cut, and you can have it in a rectangle or a square, and they're actually use this to make the beak and the feet. So you want to have all that together. So what I do is I fold just a little piece. I don't do it in the middle, maybe about a third, and I'm going to use that to cut the beak, and I cut it right on the fold, and I just cut a triangle out. You can see that's where it was, and it should look like a diamond there, and it should look like a diamond there. So if you fold it and you just cut right there, you could do a bunch this way, but I just have the students each do their own, and then they open that up. If it didn't work the first time, they can cut a second one out of the same paper then, kind of learn from their mistakes. We're going to cut a semicircle out for its feet, and it's up to you if you want to make really detailed little baby chick feet, or you can make a duck out of this. But I actually just cut a little triangle out, so it gives the appearance of 2 feet, but we're not wasting a bunch of time with it because we were making a bunch of these the other day. Now, this here is the best place for them to put their name. Go ahead and have them put it on before you do the glue, because once the glue's on there, it is very difficult. And that way when you flip it over, there's their name and you're good to go. So there's our first baby chick. First thing I do is I put a little glob of glue, just my regular Elmer's white glue, and I set my pom-pom right on there so it starts to soak into that yarn, because that's the one that takes the longest. Then I'm going to take my beak, because it is very stubborn sometimes. I make sure it's got a good fold, put the glue right on the edge, and then if you want, you can also put a little bit on the bottom or the top of the mouth. And I'm going to figure out where I want his mouth and stick it on there. Now you can have it just sticking up like this. I like to push it in there a little bit, make sure it's really stuck, and then let your students know, don't play with it. If you play with it too much, it's just going to keep falling back off, and you have to keep adding glue, and then you're going to end up, and he's not going to be very fluffy because you have all this extra glue on your pom-pom. You want just enough for it to hold on. Now this is the only time I actually put glue straight on the yarn, and that's because these eyes are so small. I had such a hard time putting glue on the eyeballs. I just thought it would be much easier to put it straight on to the pom-pom. You can tell I've got a lot of extra white glue around it. It will dry clear. This one's actually already almost dry. You can kind of see. If you want to, you can kind of wipe it off, but it's just going to smear. It's just going to make it a little bit worse. Now, what I was saying before, we did 2 different projects. I had some of my students write a story about an adventure that their chick went on. They could have another friend's chick in the story. It could be a whole family story. It was up to them. They had to solve at least one problem. So we got a story map out. We wrote out what we wanted in the story, and then they had to write a 1 to 2 page paper depending on how big their handwriting was, because we all know they're all different with their handwriting. So kind of gave them a little leeway. If they wrote a little smaller, they wrote a little bigger, they knew they had to get to that 2 page mark. The other thing we did was we made stop motion videos. The first few I made were just 8 or 9 seconds. We would place them, take a picture, move them again, take another picture, move them again, take another picture. You make them dance and spin around, do a little conversation between the 2 of them, and do a voice overlay, and you just put them together in your own movie. Now we talked about what apps worked best with this, which ones didn't. We got out my phone. I actually have a bunch of different apps on, and I was able to talk with them one-on-one or in small groups about which ones were best and which ones did what, because every app out there is different, and how some of them cost and some are free. Kind of gave them a little bit of a heads up so they can play around at home too, because a lot of our students have the Lego men now. They really enjoy using them, so they could even make a stop motion picture at home using those if they don't have these materials at home to play around with, and the chick is still at school and they kind of play around. They also played around with making longer ones as a class, so I've got those up on my channel as well. If you'd like to see them, check them out. Let me know what you're thinking. We just kind of played around for 5 minutes, put it together real quick, threw some music on it just to see what it looked like. Hopefully next week when we come back from spring break, we'll actually get to go into it a little more in depth and play around, and we'll see what comes of it. So I hope you had fun watching. Thank you for stopping by. Please leave comments and suggestions below. Next time you create something, you can put a little heart into your art and have a great day.